Happy Friday, Happy Valley. I don't know if you missed that introduction because YouTube was being a little sluggish getting us live. So if you missed it, I just said Happy Friday to all of you out there in Happy Valley and beyond. This is Connect Happy Valley A.M. We're at Pine Grove Hall as we are every Monday through Friday, 9 to 10 a.m. I'm Chris Buchignani, as I always am, and he's Greg Woodman, as he always is. And we're bringing you, as we always do, your little slice of paradise that we call home right here in the Nittany Valley. And Woodman, let's, right out of the gate, let's talk about the news that had Arts Fest buzzing yesterday. Not great news, but this is the kind of conversation that is going to carry forward probably for a long time on campus and beyond. Fire on the Penn State campus at a historic building.
Yes, Alpha Zeta Agricultural Co-ed Fraternity caught fire on the roof yesterday, and it spread to the attic. And every volunteer fire organization in central Pennsylvania, the signal went out and they all rallied, and finally, after about 3.5 hours of the building burning, they contained it and put it out.
Okay, so right out of the gate, let's just set the scene for everybody. The Alpha Zeta fraternity, as you said, the long time agricultural fraternity at Penn State. In fact, the first black undergraduate student to enroll at Penn State was a brother at Alpha Zeta. That is the red brick fraternity with the white columns right next to Rec Hall. There are, at this point, I think, is it only 2 fraternities on campus? At one time, there were at least 4.
At least maybe 5 or 6,
yeah,
actually.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay,
Yeah.
so I remember when I got up here as a student, I thought it was so cool that there were a few fraternity houses on campus. There's Fiji, which is right there on the corner of Pollock and Curtin Road. And then there was one that got knocked down.
Phi Delta Theta.
Okay, that was the one that has become green space right next to the IST school. There's the
Beta Theta Pi has been banned for life, and Penn State has purchased the building, and we're not knowing what's going to be happening to that beautiful building.
And I know then there's another fraternity that got kicked off campus.
Sigma Nu, which is now leasing its house to the Golf Association, where they put caddies in there. And it's a beautiful building that they have refurbished with many millions of dollars, and Sigma Nu is planning to come back at some point.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so right now we've got 2 active frats right on campus. Eventually we'll have 3, but Alpha Zeta, of which you are the advisor.
I am the faculty advisor of Alpha Zeta. That one of my students who was in my entrepreneurial leadership class asked me to be the advisor, and I said yes about 4 years ago, and I kind of fallen in love with this group. It's been a fascinating group because it's co-ed, tied to the agricultural school. They have many dairy farm kids come in off the farm. Turf grass is a popular membership.
Sure.
You just all these cool majors, and since it's co-ed, just a great group. And it was just I got the notice from Penn State Greek Affairs that since you're advisor, Greg, your house is on fire. We're here to support you in any way. I come running over and took a lot of video and saw a lot of the people who are members started driving up from all over, from Lancaster, from Hollidaysburg, because some of the students have items in there. And there's a lot of tears. There was a lot of tears because they saw that house going up in flames, and just the emotional at a gut level was quite a scene.
Well, there's a lot to unpack with this. This is just sort of a target of opportunity in terms of topics to discuss for us, but we talk about Happy Valley as a slice of paradise. I think there are a lot of different angles on that we can explore today because of this news, unhappy news. But there's a lot of history to that house. There is a lot to show off what Penn State, modern Penn State, has to offer in terms of the way they have kept that fraternity going and kept themselves out of trouble at a time when we talk about the number of fraternities on campus shrunk because many groups were not so lucky. There's this small town, tight-knit community aspect of something like this happens and people from all over the area and beyond pull together. And then there's just the fact that you've got one of the biggest events on the Happy Valley calendar going on. So a lot of alumni back in town, a lot of visitors, and then a lot of locals. And all of a sudden the flag goes up the pole. If you're like me, you got the cryptic University Park alert text. It's great the way they phrase these things. They're always so ambiguous about it that they scare the crap out of people unnecessarily. They say, stay away from the block between Curtin and Pollock Road because of an incident. And immediately I start getting text messages from people who also got this. They're like, Buchignani, do you know what's going on? Was there a shooting? Did somebody commit a crime? Was there a car accident? I was like, I don't know. I know as much as you do. A cryptic incident. But that's all of those things to me are examples of when the unexpected occurs, which is inevitable. The way you respond reflects the caliber of community you have. And it gives you a chance to step back and reflect on what you have and whether or not you've properly appreciated it. And we can do all of that today, but let's just start with the most practical concern, which is tell us a little bit about what has happened to the building and what the immediate path forward looks like.
Well, there is so many things to unpack. You know, I was just taken aback by the sense of community and, like you said, the history, the fact that this is volunteer run. And I was texting someone who's a very busy executive down in Lancaster, you know, and he's the Alumni Corp president.
Okay.
Mark Lowry, and I said, Mark, the house is on fire, you know, and he dropped everything, jumps in his car, but I want to stress the fact that this house is literally owned by its 900 members who have gone through this fraternity house.
Yeah, I realize probably we need to lay out for the audience just the basics of how this works, because Greg, you were Greek at Penn State, you're a brother at KDR, you spent a lot of your professional life working with fraternity chapters all over the country, helping them run communications efforts to connect their alumni and do fundraising. Obviously, I have worked with you on that. I've just spent my life living in a college town. I wasn't Greek when I was at Penn State, but I know a lot about the way these organizations function. I think it is relatively opaque to a large portion of the population, even people who know Penn State, know State College. So just explain a little bit, when you talk about being president of the Alumni Corporation, you talk about collective ownership of the house. This is the Alpha Zeta house on campus at Penn State, Curtin Road, right next to Rec Hall, caught fire yesterday and took a while, you said over 3 hours to get that under control.
Yes, you know, and
So explain how that works.
well, it is very mysterious.
Sure.
It is that, you know, in the early 1900s, some fraternity guys, not fraternities, some members who were going to Penn State here decide to create an association of men at the time. It was before it was co-ed. And they said, let's build a group together, very Tocqueville, and they got a mortgage. And back then in the early 1900s, the safest mortgage for a bank was to lend to undergrads to build a residential building on its agricultural campus called Penn State. And these guys wisely purchased the land. You know, these other fraternities that were leasing land. This is the only fraternity that I believe that actually owns the property on the land. The other fraternities had these 100-year leases. You know, so these guys get together, they start a group.
Can I just stop you right there? Because I get a lot of questions about that, about the fraternity houses on campus and what their situation is.
And downtown, okay.
But on campus, what it is vis-a-vis Penn State. So just so we understand, so Alpha Zeta owns a little plot of land smack dab in the middle of the Penn State campus, and I think the agreement is probably that if they ever sell it, the university gets right of first refusal. Is that right?
Or if it's not acting as a fraternity, then some stipulations happen.
Sure,
you know.
sure.
But one of the things they wanted to get out of the house after the water damage, because they did contain it, but the first and second floors heavily water damaged, is the volunteer and the members of the group, when they finally had clearance, went in to get these deeds out, the archives, the history, the composites, to keep it from water damage. But just the spirit of these guys, after they had the clearance, to go in there and get the original formation, was all in their library.
You use the term composite. Explain that to
That's the collection of
uninitiated.
members. You get your picture taken 1952, all the officers, that these are collective co-ops, that are member-run, member-owned, member-sustained, corporate meetings. The undergrad has their chapter, they run. This is where the leadership development happens, because they have to pool their money together for food, for their rent, for supplies, for new rugs. I mean, I've been fascinated ever since I was an undergrad who joined a fraternity, obviously on a freakish level, because I study belonging. I've raised over $100 million for these associations around the country, these alumni interest groups. And so I've studied, from the Robert Putnam social capital. But so yesterday at the Emotion, I was taken aback by all the volunteer fire departments there. Again, these are volunteers. These are membership-based groups. Saving a membership-based group
Wow.
where there's no oversight of government other than self-rule, self-membership, self-voting, electing officers, the insurance. Everything is done as volunteers to run one of the most beautiful buildings on campus that's in the Historical Society, built by a famous architect in the 1920s. And the fact that it has sustained itself over 100 years, and they're recently been in the capital campaign to raise, and the Brotherhood has already kicked in and committed over $1 million before this fire. Now,
Oh, wow.
I
Okay.
know from my experience in running with these groups that membership, of which is 700-800 people, which is now co-ed, they went co-ed like in the 70s. Oh, they're going to rally. They're going to
so
rally.
they've been co-ed since the 1970s?
Yes.
Were they the first fraternity on campus or at Penn State to do so?
I don't know.
That feels like that had to have been pretty unusual at that time.
It probably was.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. It's just another little slice of paradise factoid about Happy Valley. Do you know, you talk about the all-volunteer fire companies. State College, Center Region, served by Alpha Fire Company. Amazing, amazing organization. We are per capita the densest population served exclusively by an all-volunteer fire department in the country. Did you realize that?
I did not know that.
It is an absolute testament and tribute to the volunteers at Alpha, incredible staff, the strength of the organization they have built. And let me tell you, it is one of the hidden underpinnings of our entire way of life here, because the economic impact on our municipal governments, if we ever had to shift to a paid model, would be potentially just catastrophic from the perspective of a lot of people in terms of what it would do to our expenses and our taxes and everything. So when you say your prayers before you go to bed at night, make sure to give thanks for Alpha Fire Company.
Well, there was Alpha leading the charge. There was the Boalsburg Fire Department, and then the pros come in from Bellefonte, which with all their Victorian buildings and history of fires out there.
Undine Fire Company.
The Undine was there, which I think is fire department number one. And then Logan was there. They were coming from everywhere. Pleasant Gap was there, and they're all lined up there in front of Rec Hall, and all the TV stations were there.
Yeah, sure.
But I was taken
And
aback.
Greg Woodman was there taking cell phone footage.
I was there mainly to comfort kind of the alums and the undergrads who had to go in there and get stuff out of there and saying, this is my senior year coming up. Where am I going to live? And just the gut level emotion from people who were 48, they were just members and driving up and kind of with their family and their kids and talking about my dad was a member, I'm a member, and just the love there. I almost want to tear up.
Yeah. So you're tuning in to Connect Happy Valley A.M. right here on the Connect Happy Valley YouTube channel. I'm Chris Buchignani. He's Greg Woodman. We're at Pine Grove Hall. Check out pinegrovehall.com to see their packed events calendar, review their seasonal menu, and book your reservations to come out here and have your first experience at this lovely, distinctive location right outside State College. It will not be your last, I promise, if you do. And of course, go to connecthappyvalley.com to sign up for their weekly e-letter. we're hitting what I'm calling the target of opportunity, the news of the day, which is the fire yesterday. Mid-afternoon, mid-Arts Fest, right here on the Penn State campus, the Alpha Zeta House, historic, over a century of love and history poured into the university's agricultural fraternity right next to Rec Hall, itself a historic building, and all these volunteer fire companies that banded together, answered the call, and fought a fire for over 3 hours to suppress it. And going back to the story now, Greg, of what will come next, who owns that building? So we talked about how when it got started, they purchased the land. So that's a little square of land owned by the Alpha Zeta Fraternity Corporation inside Penn State property. So what comes next? Who owns the house?
Well, this question about who owns it, people are very fascinated. It is
Yeah.
owned by the alumni members. And so when an undergrad joins into that house, it becomes a timeshare owner on a building in the heart of the Penn State campus.
Okay. So it's
And
like the Green Bay Packers.
it is exactly like that. You know, you're a member, you're an owner, you literally own that building. So they just raised $1 million to help refurbish the roof, and I think that's what kind of caused the fires. They had some roof construction going on up on top of the roof.
Yeah.
And the contractor, evidently, some things sparked or some copper flashing or something started the fire, which then inflamed the attic. You know, and it's all wood.
I mean,
so
I was
this
just going to
stuff
say,
goes
this
up.
is a 100-plus-year-old building, all wood.
All wood.
Yeah.
Now the sprinklers I heard might have had a flaw and didn't kick in, or maybe they did kick in, and the fire department I heard turned them off because it was flooding the place.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well, plus it was an external fire. I don't know how much the sprinkler system was going to fight what it looked
Right.
like they were battling.
yeah, it was
on
going up,
videos I
up through
saw.
the attic. Yeah,
Yeah.
And so the members own it, and the members will determine through their elected volunteer board of directors how they're going to come strongly back. And I believe,
And this is like a 501c3 nonprofit corporation?
it's actually a C9, which
Oh,
is,
okay.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
membership-based
All right.
group,
Yeah.
like the Oddfellows are, and we're sitting in the Oddfellows building.
Yeah.
But, the students were concerned, like, if we don't get this thing refurbished, will Penn State take it over? And I was reassuring that I know this group, and they're going to come fighting back, and, they're going to be stronger because of it. They'll remodel the third floor. Since it is co-ed, it's an opportunity to make it more female-friendly because a lot of the female members said there's an ick factor of moving in. And I've been a big advocate of investing and help spur maybe this capital campaign that we need to upgrade a lot of the facilities because today's student is accustomed to a little more private showers and air conditioning. And maybe this is an opportunity, much like this Oddfellow building. I always see these groups rally.
Yeah,
Certainly there's
yeah.
been fires in fraternities. Certainly all the groups, they're here for 120 years against all odds because the heart, we were talking about the five senses yesterday, the sense of belonging and what I saw emotionally there, that's the catalyst to come back and come back stronger. It's the hallmark of democracy.
I love a great comeback story. We master them here at Penn State. I have been dealing in my life with a lot of, pessimism and anxiety among the Penn State football fan base about what is going to happen next for the program. And so I'm excited for this fall to start the next great Penn State football comeback story authored by Matt Campbell and company. I think that's just the personality of this place. You can hit us as hard as you possibly can. That was done to this university and the community during the scandal. And no matter what the potency of the haymaker you throw, we'll find a way to get back up off the canvas. And I think that Alpha Zeta is going to be the newest version of that.
Well, and their DNA is tied to agriculture, for crying out loud. They're farmers.
Sure.
They're off the dairy farms.
A resilient lot, if ever there was one.
You talk about a resilient lot. In this group, when I stumbled upon their faculty advisor and started attending their chapter meetings, they open every meeting with a prayer. They have a chaplain. I felt like I was
that.
going back to my 1980s. And I don't know if that's an agricultural, it's a farmer, it's dairy, it's turf grass, whatever. But the raw Tocquevillian heart and soul of that membership-based group and even their board meetings and stuff. The kids all dress up in suits, and the volunteers come from all over the country in for these meetings on Sundays for 3 hours, parliamentary procedure. I'm sitting there as an instructor of leadership and entrepreneurship saying, this is the greatest internship that the world has ever known, is to get part of a membership group, be self-rule, elect each other, peers working together. Sure, they come together and make a great tailgate, which they do, but they're running a couple $100,000 fraternal house, a residential experience completely by 19, 20-year-olds. And that's where I learned so much out of the classroom. You talk about the extracurricular. This fraternal system was the original internship back in the 1910s, 20s, and 30s. And it's the extracurricular thing that has been the hallmark of my career, belonging, you know. Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Well, and we've talked a lot so far in the nascent stages of this show's development, and I'm sure we will continue to, because it's relevant to our community of interest, and it is also just a topic that fascinates both of us, about the future of higher education and soft skills, and the editorial that Neely published in Forbes a couple weeks ago about how especially residential college education is going to have to move beyond vocational training and skills development, because it is going to be about developing more agile, adaptive humans to prepare us for the age of AI and robotics. There were all those videos flying around yesterday of that new tendon-based robotic hand. I mean, the whole thing just scares the crap out of anybody who grew up on Terminator movies, I'll say that. And one of the things I love about the Greek system and respect about it, despite all of its admittedly very evident flaws, is that it does have two elements that I think are essential to where higher ed can be when it's at its best and where it needs to go in the future for once to remain relevant. And that is community in time. You talk about kids rushing into that building as soon as they get clearance from the fire company to save the composites, those framed pictures of all the members of the fraternity from any given year. Your physical space and the way it's outfitted is so important to who you become, because you may not realize it, but it's storytelling. We talk a lot on this show about being storytellers and knowing your story. You walk into a fraternity house and you see those composites, there's storytelling happening. That's letting you know that you're part of the story, and this connection between the students having that experience and the alumni leadership who is on a board or just one of the supporters of the fraternity who went through that, and then they're later in life and can share their wisdom and can continue to support any given generation of kids who are going through it. That's community in time, and that's a big part of the university experience, in my opinion.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm fascinated with the sense of the building. Mm-hmm. And we talk a lot about being here in this Oddfellows building. You know, I was very, when these fraternities are sold, or the Oddfellows decided to stop operating and sell this building back when they did. And that's why, you know, when Liz and Steve, and they bought this and refurbished it and turned it into having a stage where we're able to have this live show, and there's live music tonight. They have a big arts festival, a lot of live music tonight and tomorrow and Sunday. You know, it's just like, we talk about the sense of the slice of paradise of the spirit of Happy Valley. But I'm like this, the building. You know, a lot of groups who used to be on campus, I think Sigma Chi their building might have burned down on campus, and they bought another building, and they bought that from Delta Tau Delta. So my question to you as a historian, the sense of place, the sense of the physical space, mm-hmm. How important is that? Because certainly I saw the emotion I'm always trying to define the intangible of these feelings and emotions tied to a sense of a building. I certainly feel it in here.
There's no doubt. First of all, credit to you for correctly pronouncing Taw instead of being a piker like myself would say Tau. It's actually Taw. But your comparison between where we are right now at Pine Grove Hall and other distinctive places, I think, is spot on. I said before, your architecture, the character of the spaces you inhabit, becomes part of your story. And especially when you're in a building that has history, that has seen things, that has hosted people going through the same experiences you're going through at a different time, where many things are virtually unrecognizable because they happened in a different era. And in other ways, they're exactly the same. Humans don't change that much. You share the common bond of being Penn Staters, of being, in Alpha Zeta's case, some tie to the agricultural community. Everybody has the same view out the window of Curtin Road or Rec Hall. They probably did the same things through the same kind of parties. First of all, not to get too woo-woo about it, but I think there probably is something to, there's energy there. There's some kind of actual memory, you know, at the molecular level enshrined in that place. But even if there's not, although I believe science is, you know, quantum physics is going to get us there one day, just the sense you get as a person that here I am, oh, hey, look, there's that composite on the wall. Those are people that were here before me. I'm another link in the chain. I think it is so important to institutionalize that. And that, I said there were two aspects that I love about the Greek system, one of them being reinforcing community in time. The other one is institutional memory. There are actual people, there are alumni you meet and work alongside and network with who can reinforce to you the point that you are not unique. You are not the first to walk this path. There are other people who have come before you, and there are people who are going to follow you. And I think that is so important to growth as a person. And, you know, it's, again, tragically unfortunate that this is what brings it to the fore. But I think you're correct. I think this fire at the Alpha Zeta house is going to bring forth all the very best of both of those.
Well, you know, in addition to the fraternity, I mean, the very best of the fire departments, which are volunteer run, you know, that's what my Tocqueville day was yesterday, that I was getting notified by the community from my friends who said, hey, I think that house you're involved with is on fire, because we did get that text that is very confusing. There's something happening on North Borough Street.
There's an incident. Please stay away from this half of campus. Okay, thanks.
And I
Thanks
don't
for the
think there's been
information.
another text out about what the incident even was.
No.
But that also
They
says
let you
something
know when
about.
the incident started, and they let you know when the incident ended.
But that also says something about media today, because, you know, through all the different social media, people knew exactly.
Of course,
you know,
which is also kind of an absurd insult to your intelligence. By the time you get that text message, it's like, guys, Facebook and Twitter exist. We know the house was on fire. Just say the fire has been contained. It's okay, you know?
Right. But yeah, so I'm more back to community, back to even our discussion yesterday when Dave Gertis was here saying you got to market the 5 senses of Happy Valley. And
Yep.
I got a little weird about, tell me what these senses are, you know.
You got to start the day with some cheese shop coffee. I'm sure your kids poked fun at you, right? You're like, Dad, you don't know what the 5 senses are?
Well, I know what the 5 senses are, but he said there was a 6th, and then he said there was a 7th. And again, it's like what I saw yesterday after that show. Like, what is this intangible that is the feeling of belonging? Like when we're yelling, "We are Penn State," and when the fire department guy's there, I'm trying to get through the barrier, saying, "Hey, I'm an advisor." You know, the police are holding me back, and I'm saying advisor, and then a couple volunteer goes, "Hey, Greg, let him through," because it's my printer, you know, who's a volunteer fire department. You know, it's like Sesame Street. It's like Penny Lane. I mean, we're all connected. And is that what "We Are Penn State" means? Is that what "We Are Happy Valley"? Not that we say we are Happy Valley, but this interconnected, we talk about, you know, how do we market Happy Valley versus Chapel Hill, or, you know, Durham, or Disney World, you know? And so yesterday, what I was wrestling with as I was watching all this yesterday, like, why are these volunteers, none of them are being paid? Why are they crying? You know, why are the kids, you know, who could join any different group or not join a group at all and be independent? Like, what is this intangible that wants us to belong, wants us to be part of something bigger than ourselves? And it was on display yesterday, you know, and so it is a great moment of resilience, but certainly farmers have been through it. Certainly we as human beings have been through it for thousands of years with our lizard brains, but it is this drawing of heart. It's a drawing that, is it love? You know, and again, as a marketer, I'm always wrestling with how you market feelings and emotions in these non-tangible things, which are actually the most valuable things in our lives, that the other marketers are pushing the gambling and the alcohol and pushing the consumer goods of paying 5 times as much as you should for a brand. So I'm on the other side of like, what is this other side that is the meaning of life that moves mountains people walk over glass for without being paid? Like, what is that? Is that a sixth sense? Is that what we have in Happy Valley better than anywhere else? But I think all college towns might have it.
Well, I'll tell you, you are selling it beautifully and very authentically by just describing your day yesterday. To go back to our conversation yesterday about Bryce Jordan Center, and when the expansion of Beaver Stadium gets done, that's going to become a concert venue. There has got to be a very short list of places on this earth, to include all college towns, where you can have all of the things, the power of and in Happy Valley, where you can see huge national acts, not 15 minutes from where you live. You can invite the next door neighbor over for a cookout, and it could be a Nobel laureate, where you can have coffee in the morning with a world famous opera singer, as I do frequently down at the cheese shop. And at the same time, when there's a fire in the downtown that pulls together a community of volunteers to support the aftermath, that when you arrive on the scene, your printer, who also happens to be a volunteer firefighter, waves you through past the cops. I mean, all of those things existing alongside one another are what makes Happy Valley so unique and so special and such a great place to live, work, play, raise a family, start a business, or retire. And it cuts to the heart of everything that we're trying to do with Connect Happy Valley and everything we're trying to communicate with this show. So you got to do some slick marketing. You got to do some smart, tourism advertising, like Dave and his team did for many years, our guest yesterday, Dave Gertis. And sometimes you just got to speak from the heart and speak truth about how incredible your home is and how appreciative you are for what you have. And that's what we want to do. We want to help people see it through our eyes. And I think you're doing a great job today, Greg. So it's Connect Happy Valley A.M. We're at Pine Grove Hall. We do this every Monday through Friday, 9 to 10 a.m., live on the Connect Happy Valley YouTube channel. Probably talk a little bit about what's to come. This show format continues to evolve. We're going to expand it to other platforms, live streaming real soon. We're going to put even more structure around the thing, so it's just not an hour of perpetual nonsense from Woodman and myself. But today we're just talking a lot about the news of the day, which was the fire at the Alpha Zeta house on campus next to Rec Hall. And Greg is the advisor to the Alpha Zeta fraternity, so he has some unique perspective into that, but also somebody who has dedicated a good portion of your life to the Greek system, not just at Penn State's campus, but all over the country. So we can kind of expand and explore that a little bit. But let's narrow back in. What you for sure, Greg, have worked on a lot of these capital fundraising campaigns that are largely dependent on the generosity of alumni to support the institution and keep it going, to facilitate that community in time. I don't know if you've ever had to work on a project for another fraternity anywhere in the country where they're having to do a physical reclamation after, the house gets run down or whatever. I assume you probably have, right?
Many times.
So what does that look like? What is the path forward in the days ahead look like for Alpha Zeta?
Well, they're well constructed. They've had a lifetime of friend raising and events and homecomings, and they've had a long history of communicating with their alums and having them dialed in, which is step one.
Friend raising, explain that.
They've invested in keeping their alums connected, all 800 members, back to the mothership, back to the house through tailgating, through homecoming, through newsletters. They got a great website. I've helped them do a lot of that over the years. They put sprinklers in the year 2000. They were one of the first groups to do it. They went out and raised $600,000. We helped them do that.
Yeah, I remember being in school at the time that all the fraternity houses were having to deal with this massive expense of sprinkler installations.
Yeah, and and so all the houses was legislated. It was a law. You had to get sprinkled. Thank goodness.
Right.
And every house had. Again, they rallied. They raised the money. They were rallying to raise the money again for upgrades to the house, because these are 130-year-old houses. You got to have maintenance, and so even painting it is not cheap anymore. So these groups, they come back again. I get back to the spirit or the feelings and emotions, which has people part with a $250,000 donation on a 3 to 5 year pledge. So my 25 years, I bought a company in the year 2000 after my great Airwalk success that was an alumni newsletter business. It had a fundraising component to it. So for 25 years, I still run Affinity Connection, and we help connect people to their membership and dial into these special feelings and emotions. Friend-raising leads into fundraising. So I have been Robert Putnam bowling alone studying this at a very, very deep level, and I've been very fortunate to see very generous people. And you have to scratch your head when I got into this business. I was in the consumer marketing business, selling shoes to teenagers around the world. They were getting a physical product. We'd sell it to the store for 30. The kid would buy it for 60. He belonged to a group that was the alternative action sports, surf, skate, BMX, that alternative kid. And they belonged to a group at Airwalk. And then I get into this other group, because I wanted to stay here in Happy Valley. I did not want to move with the company to Colorado. So I buy this company, change the name to Affinity Connection. And then for 26 years now, I've been a part of seeing $100 million leaving families to donate back to a fraternity or a sorority or a library or a volunteer fire department. We raise a lot of money there too. And so what I've discovered is this non-tangible, this sense, this visceral feeling in your heart that I am who I am because I was part of that group. And it could be a sports team. I worked with the Penn State Letterman. I've worked with the Varsity S here at Penn State. So I've become many tens of thousands of hours of scratching my head saying, what is the ingredient that has someone go to their spouse and say, I want to kick in $100,000 to refurbish a 100-year-old fraternity, or I want to support a scholarship, or I want to build a new library. So I've become probably a little too learned on generosity, on paying it forward, and feelings and emotions tied to when I was selling T-shirts in the tailgate. Like for 50 years now, I've studied what is this non-tangible that makes us get nothing in return and give a donation. And they get nothing in return. They don't even get WPSU merchandise, like CDs of Ken Burns' History of the American Revolution. And so I got to know these people.
You don't even give them an Alpha Zeta tote bag, is what you're saying?
No, we don't even send them a mini composite or do an oil painting. These people don't ask for anything in return other than, I am who I am because I was in that Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
I was in that group. I was on Joe Paterno's football team. Here's a check, here's a donation. They volunteer their time, their talent, and treasure. And we know the religious fundraising, for the thousands of years, tithing and things. But so I've just been studying, and the people who are the most generous and actually the most successful, I discovered that their whole life is driven by love, not fear. They're givers, not takers, and they become successful because their whole philosophy of life, I say it's a flip of the coin. They're here to serve. They invented businesses to serve customers. They didn't go out to get rich, but they got rich as a byproduct of being a servant to others. And these are the ones that don't say, give me something in return. Like, I want to see the blueprint. I want to see the business plan. And then they serve on the board. And they say stuff like, not on my watch. I bet when I talk to this board, the kids are saying, oh, what if Penn State takes our house because we can't afford to refurbish it, and it might be millions of dollars to refurbish it. The board will say, not on my watch. That's the kind of the attitude and the philosophy. You talk about resilience, but what is that? what is that? And that's why poor Dave yesterday, when he says he's going around the world going to trade shows saying, I'm going to market Happy Valley. I was really intrigued, like, because I don't think we've figured it out yet how we market this place. This is a laboratory right now. We're doing
no question.
Every
No
day we're
question.
trying to figure, is Find Your Happy Place the right slogan? Hell no. To me as a marketer.
You don't like that one.
Well,
You're
because
not a fan.
is it talking about love? Is it talking about, like, what is this spirit you talked about? What is this belonging? You know, I'm sure Penn State's hiring a new strategic marketing firm. I just got a survey. What do you think about the We Are slogan? And I go, oh my God, are they asking me what, are we going to get rid of the We Are slogan? And they're going to, because the new agency going to change the logo? You know, we have a new team down there at the Visitors Bureau. What's their new slogan going to be? That's the business I'm in.
I have very strong opinions, which I will reserve
Well-
for a different program about Penn State's use of these strategic
Well-
marketing firms to try to
but the
sell
survey,
itself
the survey
to its
pretty much
biggest
said,
fans.
yeah, the survey was pretty much saying we're an out-of-town marketing firm. We're going to come into Penn State, or we're going to come into the Visitors Bureau, but they're not coming into Connect Happy Valley. This is our laboratory.
In my opinion, they may as well just cash out the money they're paying to these Pulse Point type firms, put them in big sacks and set them on the roof of the Alpha Zeta building, because that's about the value they get out of it.
You know, the question is, do you feel We Are is inclusive enough? And I'm going, oh my God, there goes the slogan. What are we going to say? Penn State lives here? What are we going to do? You know, so again, we're here every day for an hour. You said, you know, what are we doing? I'm trying to figure out the holy grail here of, like, what is it that is the feeling of belonging? What is it that has a guy give $500,000 anonymously to a Rensselaer Society of Engineers up in Rensselaer that just reclaimed their house after being shut down for 5 years? Those guys raised $3 million like that, and they decided to go co-ed. They decided to have a leadership entrepreneurial component to it, and that house is flourishing up on the campus of Rensselaer. And they're the Rensselaer Society of Engineers. I've been trying to tell Alpha Zeta, change your name from fraternity and call yourself a society, because that's what really they are, and fraternity's got a negative name.
Yeah, it does. I probably tend toward feeling like, you know, kind of like the line from Office Space about Michael Bolton, like, why should I change my name? He's the one who sucks. I think if you're a fraternity, you ought to say, no, we're not going to get bullied off our identity because of what somebody else has done or what somebody else thinks of us. It's incumbent on anyone who's a part of an organization that has that name to conduct themselves in a way that they can reclaim it a little bit. But I get both sides of the argument. And the whole, you're hurting my heart bringing back up the whole Penn State lives here thing. Just the very worst of higher education. Sterile, stupid, myopic, corporate slop. And it is no coincidence that they, again, lit millions of dollars on fire to hire some imposter, fraud, useless consultancy from Texas to come up here, steal money from us, condescend to the people who have made this place go for decades by telling us we need to stop saying we are Penn State. No, you need to go back to Texas and we need to do what has worked for us since time immemorial, and foist on us this absurd, generic marketing slogan of we are Penn State that two jamokes with Twitter accounts, who I may or may not be intimately acquainted with, demolished over the span of 60 days. Millions of dollars completely wasted. So that's a parable to be unpacked perhaps on a different day on Connect Happy Valley A.M., because I do want to continue on this theme with the Alpha Zeta House. But it looks like you want to say something in response before we move on. Go.
No. I'm going to get back to kind of, we've talked a lot about the America 250, about what I call guerrilla marketing or grassroots, is that all the great things in Happy Valley have been born out of grassroots, organic,
yes,
natural. There's not been a professional firm coming in.
You don't need to hire some outsider
has dictated anything, even
to impose some cookie cutter template on us at tremendous cost. We have such great, as I go say again and again, embarrassment of riches.
We do.
Right here at Penn State and in Happy Valley, we require only, Greg, and it's one of the great paradoxes of life, that it's in such short supply, the common sense, the wisdom, which is decidedly uncommon, to see with clear eyes what is right in front of us and appreciate it. That's all it requires. And yet, we have layer upon layer of bureaucracy, which will spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, trying to get some stranger from another part of the world to come here to Happy Valley and tell us what anybody who has grown up here and had nothing to do with the university could recite back to you authentically, authoritatively, chapter and verse.
So we just want to be a connector to the hearts of people who love Happy Valley, people who live here. We want to activate that. We want to create a platform and a dialogue, because great innovation happens.
I love, by the way, watching you bristle every time I say anything that is even like remotely approaching mean. You're too much of a meanie, Buchignani. First of all, number one, let me just say that I have, as you know, a little bit of the villain in me, and I never get to be the villain on the obligatory pregame show or podcast, because that's Kevin Horn, and we can't have two villains, so I got to suppress that. Second of all, I'm just being real. I'm being real with the folks, and I'm speaking truths.
Well, why I might be a villain is, why I might bristle at you being a bit of a villain is because when
it's not villainy. It's not villainy to tell people what they need to hear.
But when you go after
tough love, it's tough love.
Well, when you go after bureaucracy, or you go after these outside, maybe Madison Avenue marketing advertising firms that our trustees hire and spend millions to reform our logo, come up with a new slogan, do a survey. I've moved on, and I think as we sit here broadcasting to my son in Scottsdale, Arizona, and my grandson and my daughter-in-law and my son who's over in Italy watching right now with Ben Lawrence as they're, working with the manufacturer over there. They're able to watch this. And so I'm excited that we have an opportunity here, grassroots, guerrilla marketing, from the people up, of the people, by the people. Connect Happy Valley. That's our mantra, is we want more people to belong into, find their people here in Happy Valley, find their subgroups, and so I'm excited that we can be Thomas Paine, we can be the Minutemen, and we can spur love and love for place, love for each other, and be an activator of that. And that's why I'm just over the moon excited about our app starting. Connie the Connector is going to be, we have a show. We're going to go to 2 hours. What are we doing? It's like the parody of Tucker Carlson. What are we doing? What's the rule? We're just trying to do what I saw yesterday at Alpha Zeta. People coming together without any bureaucracy running it. They don't even have a good national. This is all local.
Yeah.
This is like Beta Sigma Beta. They don't have a national. This is Gary's group, Gary Brandeis. I mean, guys coming together just like we did in America. That's our future. That's what is a hallmark of our democracy. And I think we probably came the best stuff we don't depend on our government for. We don't depend on, it's each other coming together.
Yeah.
That's where the great innovations come from. Anyway, that's why when I bristle, I'm saying, let's get over the people who hold us back, who are the institutions that were the gatekeepers to progress. If we're going to have Penn State lean a little heavier into the extracurriculars, into the soft skills, how's that going to really happen? Are the trustees going to vote for that? Is the provost going to really kind of come in with some dictate from the top? It's going to happen.
Yes, it is possible. It is possible. We know from the history of this institution, and we can tell by looking at other schools around the country. You love to talk about what a great job Mitch Daniels did at Purdue. It's possible to have leadership in administrative positions who are, in fact, not an impediment to progress, but a catalyst for it. So yes, it is not unreasonable to ask for that. It's not unreasonable to be very gently critical when you see things going in a direction with which you disagree. But let's walk back from the brink. I promise, Greg, we're going to get Mike the Mailman as a guest on the show real soon, and then you'll get all the rainbows and unicorns you could ever hope for.
No, but my point about bristling is Ben Novak, one of your heroes, started something that our audience has heard you speak about a few times, this little mountain called Mount Nittany Conservancy.
Yes.
He started that. How did he start it? He did it the American Revolution way. He did it without Penn State support. He did it with him and some volunteers. He volunteered, and now you're one of its great stewards and advocate, the Lorax of Happy Valley, I'm going to start calling you. And
I'll take it. I love the Lorax.
But again, so where I've moved on is I'm not waiting for FOTUS to tell me how to teach. I've been teaching the soft skills since 2007.
Sure.
I have students, 1,000 of them roaming around the country that saw the curriculum. I wasn't waiting for some dictate from the top. Ben Novak wasn't waiting. We didn't wait for anybody to give us approval to do a TV show. We just did it. You know, these fraternities, they were secret fraternities in the beginning. They were actually outlawed, and you can't stop the human heart. Talk about walking over glasses. So that's why I'm saying I don't bristle. I just move on from what these blockers are that hold us back. I'm saying, no, there's a new day of dawning.
Fair enough.
That's what I'm saying. We have an association. Connect Happy Valley. Let's start a club.
When we go to 2 hours, we can spend more time digging into this one. But let's get back to the Alpha Zeta House, because I do have a very practical question. I think, Greg, you've made a compelling case for why the long-term future for the house looks favorable, because they've got a strong alumni organization, which is already clearly all in. You talked about $1 million to a capital campaign prior to this. And there's affection, and there is sense of fidelity to that institution among such a group of people that you feel like they're going to figure out a way to build back. But you said something earlier that really hit me. This was going to be a housing situation for a lot of upperclassmen in their final or close to final year at Penn State. And I think we talked a little bit before we went live on the air today that it is reasonable to assume that house will not be habitable this semester or probably anytime this academic year, yes?
Yeah, I think because of zoning and, getting permits and everything, it'll take at least a year to refurbish. And so the undergrads who were there to collect their stuff and they had to go into the house and came out all wet, their biggest concern was, we're not going to be together. They said that we're not going to be together. Yeah, there's plenty of housing all over Happy Valley, but the human desire to be together. And I said, well, you can still tailgate together. We can still get you a meeting room. And I said, because most fraternities are terrible at marketing, I said, we'll probably get you a second floor on a fraternity that could use you. We'll try to, that was the thing. We want to get you together.
Do you have a rough estimate on how many kids
it's only
dispossessed?
It's about 15.
Okay.
Their membership group is 32. I always try to encourage them to get more members, but
Sure.
So 15 we're going to move in the house. It was co-ed. I think 5 women, 10 guys. But I'm going to start today looking around the Greek system and if we can keep them together.
Here's a controversial take. Nothing is being done with the Beta Theta Pi house. It should be.
You have to
not
deal with
too
the
far
bureaucrats if you're going to get that done.
Well, yeah, well, and
I'll bristle.
I don't want to give the bureaucrats too bad of a name. Look, bureaucracy, I think, is just, as an institution, fundamentally flawed.
But that would be a great solution.
I think it advances mediocrity, which is bad. I call bureaucracy the tyranny of the mediocre. But it is absolutely true, which is why I'm such a strong advocate for it, that Penn State has had, and indeed has, very capable, visionary, talented people occupying leadership positions. And so I think we got a lot of innovative, solutions-oriented people. Now, they are maybe thrown into a system that simply because of its size is not conducive to the solutions-oriented mind. I think that is any large organization, whether it be a big corporation, a government institution, or nonprofit. Any big organization becomes like turning a battleship versus moving an agile speedboat. But I think there are absolutely good, capable people at Penn State who are going to look to create a positive outcome here. So I think that could be a possible solution. But when you're talking about finding some place in or around Penn State's campus where 15 kids ought to be able to coexist in a co-ed environment, I think that's a doable
Yes.
outcome.
Yes, and that's the goal. And that's the goal. It's a good one.
And you and the whole team of alumni support, they're the net as you're walking the tightrope of your college years for folks who are part of these organizations. You're going to band together and help them do it.
Yes, yeah, and to your point earlier, it happened a block away from the Arts Festival in full gear. So when I went up there and I saw all the booths there and the smoke is billowing over and you could smell it all over town, it's just, all the alums are back. The town is just so vibrant right now. And then that signal went out and, it's everybody's rallying. It's homecoming, summer homecoming. It's a shame that happened, but I think it's going to be a great story, and we'll keep you apprised of it as it goes.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think people care. They care about the architecture of campus. I always thought was enhanced by the fraternity houses. It gives it that sort of old-time collegiate feel. That was one of the first things I really fell in love with when I got my campus tour. I just felt like, man, I'm at a college. Like we had Chelsea on here at the beginning of the week or end of last week, and she said that coming to Penn State from New Zealand, it felt like a college movie. When I went down Curtin Road and I saw fraternity houses right next to campus buildings and Rec Hall, I felt like I was on a college campus from a movie. So you hate to see that element damaged or lost, and the history of the building. And then you hear these stories about these kids who were committed to this idea.
Well,
And they're going to lose where they were planning to live. And you could get, hits me in my heart when you say the thing they were most upset about was that they weren't going to all get to live together. That stinks.
yeah, well, and what's neat about these young students, you were complimenting Joe about, on his entrepreneurship, but these kids are all entrepreneurial. I mean, these are the kids that, in the dairy barns, we'll be out on our walks on the weekend and we'll stop in the dairy barns. They're the ones milking the cows.
Yeah.
They're the ones in the meat labs. They have dorms over there too.
Yeah, you can live in the meat lab. A lot of people aren't aware of that.
These are the kids where they can live in Alphaveta. They live over there. They live out in the dairy barns, but they're the ones up at 4 o'clock. And
Not enough rooms in the meat lab for 15 dispossessed Alpha Zetas.
We have one of the best turf grass in the world. Most golf courses come out of Penn State. These kids are turf grass majors. They're all types of agricultural business majors, and they're just a very unique group. And again, Penn State was founded as an agricultural school.
And so as we wrap up, I'm just curious, how did you end up getting roped into the role of being their advisor? Because you had no formal connection
I'm
to that
not tied
fraternity.
to this group at all.
Yeah.
But one of the students in my class, just a bright kid in my entrepreneurial leadership class, Engineering 310, he said, "Hey, we don't have any advisor." He goes, "Can I just put your name down? You don't have to do anything."
It's always a great sales pitch.
I said, "Yeah." I said, "Go ahead, put my name down." And then, I went to the family day. They had a family day, and all of this, the place is packed with all these farmers and dairy people and their parents and the kids. And I went to their first meeting, and they have prayers, and I just felt like I was back in 1982. So I kind of, again, I talk about falling in love. I kind of fell in love with their Monday night meetings, 8 o'clock, and I'd go over there, and so I started going to their board meetings because, I'm fascinated with self-rule, membership-based groups. And this was a different, I always talk about anthropology. I like to be in situations where I'm kind of studying a tribe and how they operate and how they survive hundreds of years. And so, again, why was I there like 5 hours yesterday? I didn't have to be there. But I was just drawn to it. What motivated me to be there? And wait until I'm texting the guy coming up from Lancaster, the corp president, and what is that? It's Happy Valley.
The fact that he came up to Happy Valley from work, that makes a statement. That's like the story of Bill O'Brien puts the call out to the letterman, and hundreds of them on no notice are booking flights and carpooling and all showing up to demonstrate to the kids who were on the team at that time, when the sanctions came down in 2012, what it meant to them in their lives to be connected to Penn State and Penn State football.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, there's no substitute for that.
Well, and this guy, he's like a global marketing guy for, I think, like farm equipment, and then the other board members, the female board member, she runs like the dairy promotion newspaper, and just the occupations, and Art Keene, who's already called me 4 times this morning, he has a vineyard, and the Yoders, and all the names, and they're always getting together. But their line of work of feeding us, providing our wine to us, the farm equipment, I mean, I just love it when I'm just around these guys.
Well, this show's called Connect Happy Valley A.M. It's about Happy Valley, and why is that a slice of paradise? In large part because of the people who constitute its community, both here in the Valley and all throughout the world because of their connection to Penn State. It's good stuff. Again, not the best story in the world, but I think maybe a happy ending to come out of some tough times for the Alpha Zeta fraternity. Appreciate everybody joining us today. We're going to be back again, 9 a.m. next week. Show is going to continue to evolve and grow, and we appreciate all the early adopters out there. But until we talk to you next, please come check out Pine Grove Hall. Go to pinegrovehall.com for all the information on that, and connecthappyvalley.com to sign up for the weekly newsletter. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you on Monday. Enjoy Happy Valley, folks. So long.